Good evening, my darklings. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is just a brief intro. I am not going to be doing a live show this week and maybe off next week as well. I received some bad news on the 4th of July that my father passed away. So I am in Illinois sorting through family things and dealing with that and dealing with the loss. But I wanted to give you some content to watch. These are some of the episodes that I did on the Paranormal 360 radio show. As I said, I videotape each and every one of those episodes, so I will have episodes up for you every Monday and Wednesday. I plan to be back, if not next week, the week after. I thank you for your love and understanding and for the many messages of support that you've sent to me via social media and to my email. It means very much to me and my family. Thank you so much. And thank you for understanding my need to take a few weeks off. All right? Make sure that you hug the people close to you. Make those phone calls that you've been putting off and let people know how you feel. Because tomorrow's never guaranteed. That was a very, very hard lesson to learn again. All right. Please enjoy this episode. This is the Paranormal 360 with Ouija board historian Robert Murch, as we talk about Ouija board on the silver screen and in media in general. And then Varla Ventura joins me at the second part of the program, and we will be discussing an entire book that was crafted utilizing, of all things, the Ouija board from Mark Twain, of all people. That's right, Mark Twain is supposed to have made his presence known through the Ouija board, creating a book. So check it out, enjoy this episode, and I will be back live with you in a week or two. Thank you.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
He won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Tonight's episode of the Paranormal 360 with Dave Schrader is brought to you by Keith the Insurance Guy, helping you and your family save big on health coverage without sacrificing quality. Call 612-230-5522 and start saving now. It began as a parlor game, a mysterious board, a sliding planchette, a promise. Ask a question, and the spirits may answer. But the moment Hollywood lays eyes on it, Ouija became something else entirely. An icon of fear, fascination, and phantoms. Tonight on the Paranormal 360, I'm joined by Robert Murch, the world's foremost collector, historian, and expert on all things Ouija and talking boards. Together, we're going to explore the strange crossroads where pop culture and the paranormal collide. From boardrooms to bedrooms, from seances to the silver screen. What role has Hollywood played in shaping our fears around Ouija? And how much of it might actually be true? We're unlocking the board next, right here on the Paranormal 360 with Dave Schrader. Joining me on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, Robert Murch. Bob, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
You know, it's I love having you join me. I love having the opportunity for us to get together and talk about Ouija, all things strange and supernatural. But I do want to kind of set the stage for people that might be unfamiliar with you or your ties. You love Ouija. You love collecting. You love learning the history, but you don't necessarily lean into the fact that it's tapping into real ghosts or supernatural phenomena. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed over the years because like anything else, the more you play with something, the more you use it, the more you learn and meet other people who share their experiences. And I've gotten a chance to work at some of your conventions and then also, you know, hang out with you. And I think I've learned a lot from you and your listeners as well. You know, Ouija works. There's no doubt about it. It does. But how and why it works, I think, is pretty dependent upon the situation, the people that are playing, their intentions. There's a lot that goes on, and you know this, Steve. Once you add people to an equation or any scientific experiment, it blows it up, because there's no way to keep it as tight as you need it to actually be, to make a real scientific decision. But I think that's the point with Ouija. It's not supposed to prove whether there's life or death. It's mostly the try before you buy kind of thing, or try before you die. It gets you comfortable with a conversation that is really scary to a lot of us. I think, dying, what happens, what's going to happen to me, my loved ones. And then I think Ouija lets you kind of test it out. What is out there? What might be out there?
Now, obviously, Ouija board and iterations of talking boards have been around much, much longer than anything in Hollywood, right? I mean, what's the oldest form we can find of a talking board?
Sure. I mean, fortune telling and divination, I mean, this goes back to biblical times before that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as soon as people realized someone died and didn't come back, or not the same way they noticed, that they wanted to explore. And so I think it started really early, talking boards in the form that we think of them, with a separate pointer that you place your fingertips on, and you ask a question. That's really, the planchette itself, a separate device at one time, is about 1850. So that allowed you to write out your answers. And quickly people saw that heart-shaped device and said, wait a minute, I can't read my own handwriting normally. When I write it out with this thing, it is just clear. It's a huge mess. What if we laid out some alphabet cards and we pointed to them? And so really between 1850 and 1870, that's happening in the background. And then suddenly they merge. About 1886 is where we get the date of the talking board sweeps northern Ohio and causes all kinds of problems. And then, quickly, 4 years later, we're at 1890. That's Ouija. So you can see it happening quickly. And
now, wait a minute. What do you mean it starts a bunch of problems? What type of problems started early on in Ouija's world?
In 1886, this talking board article talks about this man who he works in New York, and he goes back and forth on the railroad, and he is just sick and tired of coming home and seeing his wife and his kids not doing any of their chores, just playing this thing and it getting ridiculous answers. So he takes them and he burns them up. And that's like the beginning of burn your Ouija board. I mean, this is pre-Ouija. The name doesn't exist yet. They're just talking boards and witch boards. And so people are already irritated. And this article in 1886 really, it gives you how to make one. Because, in 1886, people made things themselves. They weren't as big on brands the way we are today. And it just made sense. There's just letters, numbers, and symbols. You could make this yourself. So people were. And the directions gave everyone, okay. And that's that article that gets picked up by the Associated Press and blasted everywhere, all over the world. It allows people to figure it out and really see how to do it, make it personal.
Now, it's interesting to me, and we're going to talk about the collision of Hollywood and horror with the Ouija board, but it really does seem to have it's taken a dark turn. The popularity of it has taken a much more sinister sidebar, if you will. But for years, it was this fun party game, right? It was featured on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in an image that was created by Norman Rockwell. There were popular songs of the era. It's appeared on TV shows and in movies and on Broadway plays. So it's always been part of our world. But the dark element, which I think is interesting, there are so many products out in the marketplace, Bob, that everybody is PC, politically correct, and worried about how this might affect and impact sales of that item or other items that they create. But Ouija seems, even in the most controversial times, to keep dodging that bullet, Bob. As a matter of fact, they released pink Ouija boards that look like Barbie boards. They've released other rock and roll versions, right? Ozzy Osbourne had one, and some of the other legendary bands have had versions of it. Horror movies, TV shows, Supernatural, they've all had versions of this. And although there's still controversy over it, it seems like, the board game company just takes it in stride and just keeps pumping out new versions. Why do you think that it survives beyond the hatred and fear that does exist for it at this point?
I think it's a great question, and Hasbro loves this answer. So Hasbro is the current manufacturer; they own the rights to it, and I occasionally get to consult with them, which is always fun. And I worked on the movies as well, so I'm part of that. Like I'm part of the problem, making it scary because that's what people want, and we look for those things. The other thing is it dodges the bullet because the Ouija board is most people's first on purpose experience with the paranormal. It's the first time a kid or anybody may have been reaching out. They may have heard something before, they may have seen something before, but this time they're asking people, is there anyone out there? And that's different. And I think because that is most people's first experience with the paranormal, it's hard to say it's evil, especially when you look at the numbers. Right. The numbers don't lie. So, you know, if we look at how many people are really affected by the Ouija board, lots of people say it, but when the proof comes down, it doesn't play out that way.
I know I've been in front of groups as small as 50 up to 5,000, and I've asked, how many people here have honestly played with the Ouija board at some point? And you could see about half the audience raises their hand. And I know that there's about another quarter of the audience that wants to, but are afraid they're going to be judged. And I'll call them on that. And I'll say, baloney, I bet more of you have played with the Ouija board. And the fact is that, you know, your fears can control possible outcomes, bringing these intentions and fears to it. Hey, are the spirits going to mess with you? Are they going to have fun with you because they know you're frightened? And that's what you're really there to do. Like you said, we're all trying to have that experience. We're calling forth things to have something happen that's beyond our normal ken, right? So it's, to me, it's always fascinating. And I tell people, don't walk in this place of fear. And for all of you that played with it, how many really horrible things ever happened after you played with a Ouija board? And not many, right? Some were terrified. Well, I had this go on, and right, but I mean, there was a storm going on outside. That's why you were playing it. Could the lights have gone out because of the storm? Well, yeah, I guess so. Funny input and concepts. We're going to talk more with Bob. We're going to discuss more of the Hollywood influence on Ouija and Ouija's influence on Hollywood, and we'll do that next right here on the Paranormal 360. All right, Bob, the Ouija board, as we've said, has started to gain this popularity for being something that frightens people. And it's interesting to see. I'll watch people will write to me about this program and say, I will not listen because you're even discussing Ouija board. And I thought, well, isn't that silly? Because it's something you're afraid of. The more I educate myself about something I'm afraid of, the less fearful I become. And I learn through these moments. And I hope people take that into concept, you know, that anything, and I tell them about this, are you in the paranormal? Yes, and I love the paranormal. You realize that by just calling out to the air in a haunted location for the spirits to knock on the wall, you're just as guilty as if you put your hands on a planchette of doing the exact same divination. It's just in a different nature. It's because Ouija board has a better press agent, both good and bad, and that's why you guys have this sense of dread. But my audio recorder essentially is a digital Ouija board, right? I'm asking questions and I'm holding it out to the air for something to respond to me. My pendulum, my dowsing rods. Am I wrong, or is Ouija something completely different than what everybody else is using?
I agree. I think, you know, ideomotor response, or what scientists would say is what's happening is it's the small muscle, the movements in your muscles that are allowing this to go fluid because you want it to work. So that's, you know, a kind of really easy version to understand. And it's true. Our hands move, our muscles don't want to stay still. And when we set them in motion, they tend to do what we want them to do, even subconsciously. But this goes back to 1886 because what's funny to me is when paranormal investigators say, oh, no Ouija boards, it's like, wait a minute. This was one of the original things a spiritualist, a really direct relative of any paranormal investigator, this is what they used. They used it up until this article came out. Once the article came out, it did something to mediums who had a great business. You know, they had advertisements. They're listed in late 1800s inside of address books. The problem is you had to pay these people. It was a good business. Mm-hmm. Then the Ouija board is being sold for $1.25 and $1.50, and you can do this in your home as many times as you want. Well, that didn't sit very well. And very quickly, we see these spiritualists all using the talking boards. But when this comes out, suddenly they say, Ouija boards and talking boards are bad things. Be careful. You need someone who has experience to lead you through this unseen land, meaning basically pay me, don't pay it. And that caught on. And I'm not saying it's not wrong. I'm just telling people where it comes from originally. And Ouija is always about money, 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 whether it's a lawsuit from people suing it or whether it's the originators all wanting a bigger piece of the pie, always about money.
Funny, right? And that's a lot of the take on the religious aspect of divination, right? Is the church wants you to come to them to get answers through God, through Jesus, through Mother Mary. So they're going to, of course, throw shade at something that could, draw you away. If you can get answers without the church, that upsets the apple cart. So a lot of this does have to do with popularity and money.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And again, it's always funny. So I'll tell you a quick story. The Folds, William Fold, he made the Ouija board from him and his family he started in 1890, became his business in 1901, and they sold in 1966. So his name is on this box for a very long time. His wife was Catholic. She got a lot of crap. Supposedly, this is the family story that they told me, when she would go to church. He was Presbyterian, so he didn't go. And she would come home and tell him, yeah, really not a great day. That's all they want to talk about is my husband's the devil making Ouija boards, and I'm here sitting in, this church, not really fun. So he goes and talks to them and supposedly says to the priest, hey, if you really think these things are evil, I'll stop making them. But I got to be honest with you. We've been making them a long time. Never had anything horrible, bad happen, not even remotely. And I don't use it or see it that way. I just make it as a game and an amusement. And he said, the priest, well, that's fine. Then you can continue to make them. We would appreciate a very large donation every year. And every year until he died in 1927, they made that donation. Shortly after, his kids took over. And when his kids took over, they decided, why are we paying this? This is ridiculous. They stopped paying it. And shortly afterwards, the local area churches start coming out against the Ouija board. And then it picks up speed. So we start to see real national and then kind of bigger worldwide movements against it, which again, money.
Right. Now, my understanding, which you're kind of shining a light on, was always that the Ouija board was pretty well accepted. And of course, there's going to be bad press from time to time, but what really kind of flipped the script literally on the Ouija board and its popularity was about 15 seconds in a movie called The Exorcist?
Yeah, this little teeny scene that just kind of blows up the thing, and they don't focus on it. The great thing about the movie, and I've had many conversations before William Blatty passed away, I know that someone would ask that about this, and it was really a visual way for him to show that this girl who was being somewhat ignored by her mother, didn't really know what was going on, cared more about her being an actress than knowing what her daughter was doing. That's how she becomes possessed. Now, they don't say that. They just show it like you said, real quick. That causes everyone to believe, wait a minute. So if I play the Ouija board alone, I can become possessed by a demon. And,
Right.
The movie scared the hell out of the world, let
Everyone.
alone. And it caused, by the way, got many articles right after that, caused Ouija board sales. At the time, it was Parker Brothers. Zoom. I mean, couldn't go higher, couldn't go faster. So Parker Brothers, they didn't say it was okay to use it, but they didn't go after them because they sold a lot of boards. And, that's ultimately what selling a product is about too.
Didn't at one point, maybe I'm misremembering this, but didn't they at one point even embrace that on the box it said something like, it's just a game, isn't it? Almost like they were challenging you to think for yourself.
Yeah, especially early commercials. There's a great commercial from the early 80s. For your listeners, it looks just like Jeff Belanger as a kid. It's creepy as hell. It really looks just like him. And it looks like him. And in it, they ask that question. They'll say, it's just a game, isn't it? And that becomes the key, because Ouija never really falls anywhere. It's a game, but there's no winner. The rules are really simple. If there's any rules, the rules that people believe are way more introduced than the rules that are on the box. I don't think anyone reads the back of the box, because it's just like, take it apart, put it down, put your fingers on it and ask a question. I mean, what we institute to make us feel better or just out of ritual, I think is what is more popular.
Right. And opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, ways to kind of, again, set intention so that you're communicating in a way that's comfortable for you. You feel that there's a completion to the ceremony that you've just been a part of. So a lot of that, again, is a psychological element as opposed to these are the official rules, because there's never been truly a rule book written for Ouija, has there?
I think a lot of people have tried, especially lately, especially now that you can self-publish. There's a lot of stuff being pumped out of there. But I tell everyone, it's what works for you. This thing is basically a mirror. It's a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your intentions. It's a reflection of the mood you're in. It's a reflection of everything. You're throwing stuff at it, and you want stuff to come back. You're in a bad mood, you're going to get a really bad session. All of those things just happen and play into it, and that's the fun.
I used to be in sales, and we used to sell those little impulse items at the grocery stores. And we got the Parker Brothers line of keychains. So there was like a little miniature game of Sorry, a little miniature game of Monopoly. And then there was the little miniature Ouija board in a drawer you'd open up with a miniature planchette. And we constantly had stores calling us back just to reorder that. They had to get the whole case. They couldn't get just the Ouija board, but they couldn't get enough of them. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we can't get enough. Let's find out more right here. Are you self-employed, a freelancer? Maybe you're just paying out of pocket for you or your family's health insurance. If so, you're probably overpaying by hundreds of dollars every month. Meet Keith, the insurance guy, a real problem solver who's helped families and small business owners save 29 to 51% on their health care without giving up quality care or switching providers. One happy client told us, Keith saved our family $400 a month, and we didn't change a single doctor. With an open network, you'll see the doctors you know and trust. No referrals, no restrictions. Keith can also help companies as well as individuals nationwide. So call 612-230-5522 or visit KeithTheInsuranceGuy.com. Don't let your health plan drain your bank account. Keith can help you save starting today. Call or text 612-230-5522. 612-230-5522. Well, according to my Magic 8 Ball, Bob, I ask time and time again, is the Ouija board evil? And it says, ask again later. But isn't my Magic 8 Ball another divination tool? Isn't that another? Why does that not have such a bad rap?
I think it's a great question. I've very much been hit on this. I think actually, I'm trying to think of who. A friend of mine, it will come to me while we're talking about this. Mike Zone from Oddities.
Oh, sure. The TV show Oddities, right?
He's always on this. Why is the Ouija board evil and this just not? What's the difference? And the difference is, like, a lot of years of stories. There have been so many generations that play with the Ouija board, make it their own, add their own time stuff to it, pass it on to the next generation. They do the same thing. So every year, just working on the movies, we've created Ouija stations. That's what we call these things that people believe in. And, they're great because they're new. But looking through the planchette's eye and seeing ghosts, that was created specifically for Ouija, the first movie. I was at a paranormal convention a week after that aired. Everyone was looking through the planchette as if that has always been how it's been. And that was huge for me because I'd never seen a Ouija station in the making. I've always researched when did they come from, who started them, what was going on. This thing I got to say I was part of, and then I watched it give birth into the world. And to this day, you cannot tell someone. I just warn people, look out. There's like little things that stick out. You poke your eye out, Right. I'm more worried about that.
So I'm watching TV. I settle in for a day, and I decide I'm going to go back to a favorite childhood TV program, Lost in Space. And I pick a random episode. I can't remember. It was like Space Ghost episode, or I can't remember the title of it, but something about it caught my eye. And I start watching it, and lo and behold, I've watched this series over the last 57 years, Bob. I must have seen the series completely 20 times. how do I not remember Dr. Smith breaking out a Ouija board? Oh, young Will, let's communicate with the other side, right? And there's a Ouija board that they use in the series. How many more surprise appearances by Ouija board are there in popular pop culture TV programs we probably have forgotten about?
Hundreds. I mean, hundreds. I try to track this. This is just a fun thing for me.
Right.
I try to track them, and I try to collect the boards from the TV shows and movies. And it's crazy. The reason you don't remember it is because Ouija is everywhere. It's in almost every horror movie somewhere, even if it's just sitting on the shelf. If you look carefully, I think Gone Girl. Like, so his sister, if I remember this right, is a bartender, and they're big into games. Every time they show that bar where he goes to visit and talk to her sister, there is a Ouija board in the pile. They're everywhere. So it's not that, I mean, it is, you saw it, you just don't remember it, because it's like saying, I don't remember seeing black. Well, there's black everywhere. And that's what happens with Ouija. But once you think about it, it's everywhere. So now you are going to see it in everything. And now, for your listeners, he sees it everywhere anyway. He sends them to me all the time. So that he is a huge help with my cataloging, because every now and then I'll get a, hey, did you see this on Pawn Stars? Or did you see this on that? It's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but you'd think on classic shows like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, the Ouija board would show up, but that never happened, right?
Yeah, well, Bewitched, absolutely. I tell people all the time, no, there's no episode. There's no episode. Sure enough, there is an episode with it. But don't read the back of the box. The back of the box will tell you it's on the wrong episode. I've gone through that as well. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, it tells you, oh, it's on, this disc episode, whatever, and it's not. If you keep looking, and I think that's why a lot of people, when they researched, thought it wasn't there. I just went back and said, wait a minute, that's a little strange that they would make that big of a mistake, that it wouldn't be there. But it's in Bewitched. I mean, it's in House. There's an episode where these little kids use a Ouija board and it says he's cursed. And then all of a sudden, this kid starts coming down with the craziest illnesses, and he believes he's cursed. And I mean, the fun thing about Ouija is it is used by Hollywood to show so many different things. It could be a straight possession like The Exorcist, or it could just try to prove in the power of your mind, like House. They really went at that from, he believes he was cursed, therefore he was actually getting these diseases. They were manifesting themselves, but just from his mind.
Hey, spoiler alert, Bob. Not all of us have seen the episode yet.
Sorry.
Am I hallucinating this? I could have sworn, and I've tried to find it again. Didn't Lucille Ball use a Ouija board on like I Love Lucy or Here's Lucy or one of those shows?
It's in the first season. I want to say it might be episode 3. It might be further. I think the name of the episode is called Seance, and it is hilarious because, as anything, they do not look at the Ouija board as evil, and that is very typical of the time. So for people who believe Ouija boards have always been evil, that's not necessarily true. That's something that's newer in its life, that more people think it's dangerous. But early on, there were people who were claiming it was bad. And again, out of religious beliefs, or out of, you were hitting someone's pocketbook. But there were stories really early, 1890s to 1901, people committing suicide using the Ouija board, doing what it said. That's the big one that I tell everybody is, like, don't give the Ouija board power. You wouldn't give it to another person in your life. So if you're one of those people who really says, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Why would you possibly do what something you don't know what it is or who it is? Why would you do what it tells you to do? I mean, that's like going on the train. I used to live in Boston, and jumping on the red line. If I did everything that someone told me to do on the red line before I got to my next stop, I would have killed someone else, killed myself. I would have peed on everybody. I mean, all these things would have happened. And of course I wouldn't do those things because it's crazy. And yet when you sit at the Ouija board and you put your fingers and it starts to move, something different happens. You want to respond. You want to believe it's either who you believe it is, or that it's, that it's telling you the truth and it's making it helpful. But I would just warn you, don't do that. That's literally crazy. It don't care enough about yourself that you decide what you do. And if it sounds good and it's something you would normally do, that's great. That's probably where it's coming from. But if it's something you would not normally do and puts you in a dangerous place or gets you in trouble, don't do that.
You're right. And I love the fact that you're saying don't let it get the power over you. Don't give up your power. I always tell people, and even Gary Galka, Bill Chappell, other Frank Sumption, anybody that created paranormal investigative tools that talk or communicate. I said, what do you do when something dark or weird happens? They said, I turn it off and put it away. So I always tell people, here's what you do. If Ouija starts giving you answers you don't like, put it back in the box, put it on the shelf, and for a little irony, put it right under the game of life so that it remembers its place. We got to take a break. We'll be back with more Bob Murch and more Ouija right after this. Okay, Bob, let's start off with some of the other surprise places. Like I said, I was surprised in a science fiction TV show, Lost in Space, to see a Ouija board make its presence known. What are some of the other shows that people maybe, could go find and watch an episode that, they would not have expected it?
Trying to think of something that would really surprise. I mean, none of it surprises me anymore because I've seen so much of it, and I also own them. I'll have to send you a picture of my library that is built now. So I try to get a DVD or Blu-ray or VHS tape if that's some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think because it's in everything. Touched by an Angel. Who would have thought? There's an episode of Touched by an Angel. I believe it's the crossover episode where there's that spin-off family that goes off for a little bit. It's like somehow they're involved. They use a Ouija board, and it sets off again a series of things that can go wrong. But I mean, it's in horror movies. I know a great one is I just lost the name of it, but you'll know it. It's where they use it to give messages, but it's not from the other side. They use it as a device to talk to people who cannot talk, and it's with oh God, what is it? It's with I can't think his name too. He passed away. Who's the Mork and Mindy?
Oh, Robin Williams.
So Robin Williams was in it. Robert De Niro was in it.
Sure, that Awakenings.
So there was a very typical, literally right on his thing. That's what they use. They help him move, and that's the beginning of a lot of people who need assisted communication. They start with a Ouija board and then create different boards. Hawkins, his first communication device was a Ouija board. I'm still trying to get that one for my exhibit, so who knows?
Well, I will let you know, Bob, that we used the Ouija board. When I was filming the show, The Holzer Files, we were going to the Franklin Castle in Ohio, and there were all these crazy stories, and it had been used for many different uses throughout its history. And part of it was that it was housing for like college kids and boarding houses. And people used to play with the Ouija board there because of the ghosts that are known to be there. And I contacted you. I contacted Karen Dahlman, a few of my friends that are big into the paranormal and Ouija boards. And I'm like, theoretically, can I close down all these past versions of, cases that have been open? And I love that you were so open. You're like, yeah, man, do that. That'd be great. You're putting your intention out there, manifesting, try to help these spirits go back if that's really what brought them here. And that excited me and excited the crew. And I remember you going, but Dave, people are going to hate you for using the Ouija board on a paranormal show. And I said, I know. That's why I want to do it, because I want to turn it on its ear. We're not bringing it in to communicate and open a dialogue. We're going to bring it in to try to heal, to try to help. And in that episode of the Franklin Castle, which was, I think the episode's called The Final Word of the Holzer Files, we capture, I think, one of the best apparitions we've ever captured. I can't blame it on the crystal gazer board that I used, but it was an amazing episode all the way around. And I've got that signed now by Shane Pittman, Cindy Keza, and myself, and we're going to be donating that to you in your church, your museum. It's kind of a church.
There's definitely no Church of Merch. That does not exist.
Church of
Merch is definitely
not
only
yet.
in here.
Yeah, we will. But I'm sure plenty of people wanted to crucify you over the use of Ouija board, though. So you're already fitting into the religious aspects of this.
Absolutely, many people.
We've only got a few minutes left. What are some of your favorite stories regarding the Ouija board?
Well, I get contacted quite a bit, and luckily, John Kozak, one of my best friends, he runs the Salem Witchboard Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. That's the first location. You can also visit it in Baltimore, the Baltimore Witchboard Museum. We are getting so many, which is great, in person, and people are able to videotape their stories, so we can actually use them and go back. I mean, I've heard things from, I've heard serious stories like that have taken me back by surprise, because mostly it's a lot of laughing with Ouija because it says crazy things. But one time I was using it and with someone, and it contacted someone. It contacted what they believed was a baby that they had terminated many years ago. And that woman always felt horrible about it, just something she carried with her. And actually going through it, I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into again? And I just kind of stayed with it. And in the end, she felt that presence gave her, said it was okay. It understood. It wasn't angry. She should, not feel guilty and move on with her life. So I have seen the Ouija board actually take years of guilt away from someone. And I've also seen just a bunch of younger people scream and yell because it told them the color of their car or whatever it is. So I mean, there's a huge, it's big. It's a big swing.
And I love that it has sway even over social media. There's a couple of my favorite TikTok videos where the father's in the basement by the power board, and he hears the kids are playing the Ouija board and they're asking questions, and he flips the switches and turns the power off, and they all start freaking out. But you work with movies and TV and different projects that want to use the Ouija board. Have you ever had them come to you and say, Bob, weird things started happening when we were using that on set?
Yeah, on set, I get lots of stories. And because I collect these boards, I try to put them with them. So even though it's, maybe a prop board, it was made just for the movie, it still works just like a regular Ouija board. And so I will hear all that stuff and I get so excited. They send it to me. I put their stories with it and I'm like, perfect. Now I'm going to see something crazy in my own house. Nothing. They don't not like me, Ouija boards. I think they like me because I saved them and I helped them and I've helped kind of, get their history out there and stuff. But they don't like me enough to, possess me or do any of that other stuff. Honestly, it's pretty boring. It's usually fun. I always tell people, ask for the lottery numbers, for the love of God. Just ask for the lottery number. I want you to win. I want you to win. Everyone wants you to win. Ouija wants you to win. And if you did it, I want that Ouija board afterwards because it will go into this museum.
Do you have celebrities that come forward and admit that they played the Ouija board or have donated one of their boards to you?
I finally, this is after 25 years. I will write this story. It happened last year. I was supposed to get the board from What Lies Beneath. I worked on that movie in 1999, and they said I was going to get it. It turns out it got lost. 25 years later, someone comes to me with it, and it's the board. It's the same one they signed on set for me, and I was really excited to get that set. But I trained Michelle Pfeiffer how to use the board for that movie, and we scared her. So that is my biggie board because it's Michelle Pfeiffer.
Right. Well, Bob, as always, thank you so much. We do have links on today's program guide so you can find out more information. The Ouija board didn't just survive the rise of horror films and pop culture, it fed it. And thanks to Robert Murch, we now know just how deep the roots do go, from spiritualist seances to silver screen scares and everything in between. If you thought the Ouija board was just a gimmick in your grandma's attic, think again. It shaped belief, inspired fear, and depending on who you ask, opened doors that maybe should have stayed shut. A big thanks to Bob Murch for guiding us through the history and hysteria. But hold tight, Darklings, the weird is just getting started. In hour 2, Varla Ventura joins me to unravel a paranormal literary bombshell, a novel dictated through the Ouija board by none other than the ghost of Mark Twain. Yeah, that Mark Twain. Is it madness, marketing, or a masterpiece from beyond the grave? That's next on the Paranormal 360 with Dave Schrader.
Have you ever felt like something or someone was trying to tell you something? That inner nudge. That quiet whisper from the universe. With intuition sharpened by years of spiritual connection and a deep-rooted gift. Winnie Schrader delivers readings that are compassionate, insightful, and shockingly accurate. Whether you're facing a crossroads healing from heartache, or just curious what the cards reveal, Winnie creates a safe, sacred space to explore your journey. This isn't fortune cookie fluff. This is honest, intuitive guidance from someone who's helped hundreds find clarity, closure, and confidence. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Book your session now at lovelotustarot.com and take control of your journey. That's lovelotustarot.com. Winnie's sessions are personal, powerful, and often life-changing. That's lovelotustarot.com.
Now, during the Halloween season, the veil between the worlds gets thinner and the chills get real. Oh, so very real. Something is waiting in the dark, and it's calling your name. So answer the call this Halloween season for the Paranormal 60 presents Halloween Haunts and Hijinks, October 9th through the 12th, for a supernatural weekend you'll never forget. It's being held at the historic haunted Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. Join Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files, Ghosts of Devil's Perch, and the host of the Paranormal 60 podcast. He's teaming up with Dalen Spratt from Ghost Brothers and Phantom Forensics. And we have heart-centered, intuitive Diet Renee for a weekend packed with spine-tingling experiences. You'll have 2 nights of live investigations and paranormal experiments, interactive workshops, gallery readings, and meet and greets, live presentations with experts themselves. This isn't just an event, it's a doorway to the unknown. So you have to ask yourself, do you dare cross it? Now, tickets are limited, so please book your Halloween Haunts and Hijinks adventure now at darknessevents.com. Again, that is darknessevents.com.
What if one of America's greatest literary minds never stopped writing, even after death? In 1917, a book emerged claiming to be dictated not by man, but by ghost. Its author, the restless spirit of Mark Twain. Its tool, the Ouija board. Tonight, I'm joined by the incomparable Varla Ventura, researcher of the strange and author of all things wonderfully weird, as we crack open the chilling tale of Jap Herron, a novel allegedly penned from the afterlife through the hands of a woman named Emily Grant Hutchings. Is it a spiritual hoax or spectral authorship? We summon the truth right here, right now on the Paranormal 360, and joining me on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, the one and only Varla Ventura. Good evening, Varla. Thanks for being here.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
We just had a chance to talk with Bob Murch about the kind of impact and effect that Ouija had on mainstream media with movies, TV, music, everything. And it's really kind of interesting that it had an effect, but then all of these other, I guess, outlets also had an impact and an effect on Ouija board itself. Where do you stand? I know that you've written and you've got a great new article out. I don't know, we don't call it an article. You have the new Shadow Zine magazine that's out, and that's it right. Is all about
issue number 3.
Yeah, issue number 3, Mark Twain's Ouija mystery. Where do you stand on the enigma that is the Ouija board? It seems like there's a pretty solid line of haters, lovers of this tool.
Yeah, I know the Ouija can be very polarizing, even just within the paranormal community. It can be kind of polarizing. Well, I love Ouija boards, so big surprise. I mean, I think the Ouija board gets a bad rap, and I think some of that is, of course, due to its representation in movies, in film especially. Right. 1980s and early 90s did a lot to scare people off of the Ouija.
As a child of the 80s, do not blame me, because it was the 1970s, those hippie weirdo radical leftists that came out with the Exorcist movie, and that, like 8 seconds on screen, is what radically flipped.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you have the Conjuring, and so
right.
But I think it gets a bad rap. I really do. I think people have this assumption that there is something within the board itself that is somehow demonic, and somehow like evil or something. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think that it's a tool like any other tool. It's a divinatory tool. And that is what it was traditionally used for. Various forms of divination through spirit boards prior to them being, officially Ouija boards have been used for centuries, right? So if that were really true, if every time you were doing that, then, all of these people would be like writhing around possessed and all the demons would be unleashed. I don't know. Maybe they were. Maybe that's the state of the world we're in. But I just think it's a tool like any other tool. I think it's a powerful tool. I think there's something about it in particular because it has the alphabet and the yes, no, goodbye on it that gives us this very haunting feeling because other forms of divination, such as automatic writing, okay, a person goes into a trance and they start just, channeling, scrying, or there's so many different kinds of divination. None of those actually spell out words. The Ouija board does, and I think that gives us chills down our spine because we start to get those answers. It's a little bit like an EVP recording when you hear the word yes or something. It's just more affirming, and I'm not sure we're always ready for that affirmation. So
Well, I know Bob does not necessarily stand on the side of it's paranormal.
right.
We know the idiomotor effect, the
Yeah.
micro movements that are going on. There's a big faction of people that believe, well, it is in fact the spirits using you. You're channeling like an automatic writer. You become the scribe, and it is through you that these spirits are affecting and impacting the equipment. But Varla, I've been on investigations where people whip out their dowsing rods and they swear by the dowsing rods and they get remarkable responses. And I watch large groups of people just stop. They freeze. They stop their investigation to watch these two copper rods either cross or swing apart. And I have video footage where I zoom in on their hands and I could see their hands tipping and tilting,
Mhm,
and they
mhm.
will swear by everything holy they're not moving. So, like some divination tools, those and the scrying pendulums, the ones where our hands are innately involved, I
Yeah.
always seem to, I can notice the little effect of their
Yeah.
movements and hands, but I don't know if it's their consciousness not allowing them to see that they are affecting these things. Where do you stand on other divination tools like this? Do you believe that it really is something spiritually affecting us, or are we becoming part of the transfer of energy that the spirits are utilizing us to communicate?
So a little bit of both actually, because first of all, something that's happened to me using the Ouija board is like there's a like a kinetic energy that happens. And so with kinetic energy, your thoughts are basically projecting and you're subconsciously pushing this planchette around. And I've experimented with that by using the Ouija alone, which is something people think is really scary, but I don't know, it's kind of fun. But I've also had sort of more unexplained experiences, including my first like real Ouija experience that I had when I was, like 7 years old. But I think with scrying, I mean, even with the use of any kind of divinatory tool, tarot, whatever it is, we're looking for answers. We're not doing it because we don't want to know something, and so we're looking for answers. And if you're in a seeker mode, you're going to find something. However, I do believe that it can be used as a divine conduit. I absolutely believe that any tool can be used as a divine conduit in the right frame of mind and in the right circumstances. But just like any kind, any kind of paranormal experience, you're going to just walk in and it's going to happen. It doesn't work like that. And so I think like with Ouija, being able to kind of put yourself in the right frame of mind and be in a situation where you trust the people that you're with, and also just like, well, let's just see what happens, not necessarily trying to determine something. But I still think that that's rare. I think a real trance mediumship is rare. And I think there's a lot of us that, want to see things that may or may not be there. So I'm
Right.
kind of a little bit in both camps. I think it exists. I think it really does happen. I think it is real, but I also think that there's a lot of stuff in the way. And sometimes people, they want to believe, and I don't blame them. I mean, I do too sometimes, but as far as like other divinatory tools, I mean, that's, ask anyone who reads tarot and they'll tell you, oh, I can read your cards, but if I pull one for myself, I have no idea what that means because I don't want the message that it's there to receive. So it's a little bit of, it's not really a black and white issue for me. It's a, blurry, smeary, messy issue.
What is not a blurry, messy issue is number 3 of Shadow Zine, and you can find more information by going to shadowzine.com. Mark Twain's Ouija mystery, Varla Ventura, is the author. It is all about the book that was channeled through a Ouija board called Jap Herron. We'll talk a little bit more about that case, the story, and might just surprise you to find out that this isn't just the only book that's ever been claimed to have been written from the other side. Let's talk a little bit more about Ouija. We'll talk a little bit more about Mark Twain, and we'll do that next right here on the Paranormal 360.
Oh, are you reading me? Come in. Hello? Greetings from the Shadow, and welcome to Shadow Zine. My name is Jeff Belanger. I'm an author, podcaster, and explorer of the unexplained. For 30 years, I've been investigating the paranormal, UFOs, monsters, and things that bump in the night. Lately, you may have noticed how major TV networks and even social media networks have been pushing our favorite subject back into the shadows. I say good. That's why I launched Shadow Zine, a monthly underground publication that covers your favorite topics in depth by some of the leading writers and researchers out there. If you're looking for 30-second TikTok clips, go somewhere else. If you're ready for a deeper dive, put down your phone and pick up Shadow Zine. You can't find it in stores. This is old school print. Head to shadowzine.com and be part of the underground revolution. That's shadowzine.com, and I'll see you in the shadow.
Viva la revolution! Mark Twain's Ouija mystery, that is issue number 4 of Shadow Zine. And now that you've heard about the magazine itself and the amazing things that are covered, let's talk about this journey. Take me back, if you will, to 1917. This is what, like about 5-6 years after the death of Mark Twain, correct?
Yeah, I believe he died in 1910. So the publication was 1917, but this process to write this book started, I believe, in like 1916. It took her over a year, maybe even late 1915. So first of all, it's very important to understand the kind of the context of the times. Please. Which is that, so the spiritualist movement was still thriving, the spiritualist movement being the belief that not only we can talk to the dead, but that they have messages for us. So this is where the popularity of the spirit board and mediums, the famous Fox sisters were kind of at the forefront of the spiritualist movement in the 1840s. So 1865, Civil War, lots of dead in the United States, a nation in mourning. Spiritualism has another uptick. It doesn't really go away, and it still exists today, of course. But by 1917, we had World War I was kicking off. We hadn't joined it quite yet when Emily was starting this project, but there was a little bit more of a interest in the spiritual, the paranormal parlor games, so to speak. And the other important thing to understand is that for women at the time, the spiritualist movement really gave them a lot of autonomy. You didn't have too many, late Victorian, going into the Edwardian era and the interwar era. Women couldn't even vote, right? You weren't allowed to show an ankle. Your choices were basically, if you had a career, you would give it up you only had a career until you got married. Or you lived the life of a so-called spinster at age 30, if you hadn't married yet. Or you entered a nunnery, or you inherited wealth and had some measure of independence. So, at this time, women were still publishing books under male names. So it was difficult to have any kind of thriving career that wasn't sort of looked down upon. I mean, you could become a whore, or you could, possibly be like a stage actress or something. But for the average, let's say the average housewife looking for something a little bit more, there weren't that many options afforded to you that weren't adjacent to your husband, or your father, or even at the time, male cousins had more rights than women did. So that's kind of important to understand, that the spiritualist movement, really, the psychic arts really helped women sort of put themselves on the map. And what we have today in terms of the psychic arts is because of those women. What we look at today in the paranormal community is on the shoulders of these women who were, considered out there, but also like kind of an acceptable out there to a point. So one of the things that was happening is that women were able to publish as sort of like channeled materials. So in about 1915, Emily Grant Hutchings lived in St. Louis. She was a married housewife, middle-class housewife, had sort of a delightful husband who was head of the parks, and they were sort of described as this bohemian couple. And she was really good friends with a woman named Pearl Coran. Emily got a hold of a Ouija board and brought it to Pearl. And basically the two of them started experimenting with it. And they made contact with an entity called Patience Worth. Pearl began from there on out to channel Patience Worth in mostly through automatic writing, but occasionally through the Ouija board. And she found near instant success being published.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, in 1917, she had a book published called The Sorry Tale. This was a channeled book. It's by Patience Worth, but Pearl Coran was the channeler. And it received accolades. It was given some literary awards, in fact.
And this came from automatic writing, correct?
Yeah, this was a channeled book. This is, through automatic writing.
Now, let me throw one thing into this mix that I want people that are rolling their eyes and, oh, this woman just found her in how to write her own book, but really kind of get the attention. Do you know that there are many, many musicians throughout time and history that will tell you that they sit down and become a channel? Something moves through them. Jimmy Page, right?
Oh, yeah.
From Led Zeppelin talks about that openly, that things would just come through him. There are many musicians and scribes that have had that, where they feel like when they open that spigot up, the music flows through them. It's not coming necessarily from them, but through them, they're creating. So it sounds weird that somebody's channeling a book or channeling something creative, but artists, musicians, I mean, even going into more recent times, right? You've got the author of the Twilight series who had a dream about a sparkly vampire,
Yeah.
inspired a top-selling book series and movie series. So it's not so far out of the realm of believability.
No, it's really not. I mean, Aleister Crowley channeled the Book of the Law.
Right.
That was all channeled. That was like one long channeling session. And I mean, it's happened to me if I'm really in the flow. But the thing to remember is these women didn't just channel and then just pop it out there. They actually went through an editing process. They had editors. They went through a publisher. So it was channeled. The divine flow of it was channeled, but then it actually was, polished up a little bit.
Sure.
So there was an element of the writing aspect there. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Channeling kind of gets this like woo-woo type label attached to it. But anyone with a lot of creative ability will attest to that, and sometimes that's just a good thing to do as a creative person, is to just see what comes out and turn off that outer mind and kind of, get into that. So that's kind of what those women were going through. And then Emily went to a session with a famous psychic medium, and an entity made contact asking for a scribe on Earth. And that entity was spelled out the name Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain. And over a series of several sessions, this entity began asking for Emily's presence at the board. And this is how the process began for her to write this book, dictated painstakingly from a psychic typewriter, essentially, a Ouija board, one letter at a time.
Mark Twain's Ouija mystery, that is the focus of Shadowzine issue number 3, and you can find that at shadowzine.com. I think you can even find signed copies if you go through Varla Ventura personally and off of her website. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and let's find out a little bit more about Mark Twain and his need to continue his literary masterpiece next. All right, Varla, automatic writing. Now that seems like something that I'd be okay with, allowing the spirits to come through and writing what's coming through the mind right to the hand. That's got to be kind of a fast flow. The idea of sitting down with a Ouija board and one letter at a time writing an entire novel, That
Yeah.
is man, that's really committed to this entire thing.
It is. It is. I think
Crazy.
about that. I think about the level of patience and how much time that took. Which I mean, it took them about a year for this novel, but there were a couple of other short stories that came into play.
Isn't it interesting that you use the term patience when in fact the first person she began to channel was named Patience?
Oh, right. So that's Pearl. So now we're on to Emily, right?
Right, I
So
know
now,
that, but I'm just
yeah,
saying it's interesting that
patience.
she was already
Yeah,
kind of setting that stage. The spirits
yeah,
were teaching her patience through working on
yeah.
that, right? Yeah.
I know. Have to look up Emily's birthday because I suspect she was a Virgo. That's all.
Eh,
Like she's got a lot of attention to detail that I admire, but do not have myself. But one of the ways that this is my favorite part of the story.
mhm.
One of the ways that they expedited the process was so the spirit, this is how the story goes. The Twain spirit says, something like he basically he's getting tired of spelling out that was a parenthetical statement. And so Emily and her husband get this idea that what they should do is basically put shortcuts for a lot of the just various and sundry punctuation marks that you would need or other grammatical things. So they painted the Ouija board and they painted an M dash, an N dash, a hyphen, a semicolon,
Oh, wow.
parentheses marks. So they
So
had
it
some.
did become a typewriter.
So they had some keyboard shortcuts, yeah, and they
Cool.
describe, and I have the excerpt in the zine. They describe actually getting India ink and sort of like painting these things on, and then the ghost saying something like, "Can you move that comma down a little lower? I keep falling off the board every time I come running at it." And so there's just all of these fantastic details in the story and Emily's introduction to the book that talk about the process and you can fall like I want people to make up their own minds. Like you can fall in camp. Emily absolutely channeled Twain. You can fall in camp. Emily was like eccentric and just looking for a hook. You can fall somewhere in between. I sort of sought to give a little bit of a different perspective. One as a woman and as someone who is aware of the situation that women were in at the time. And two, also, I just, as a writer, I kind of understand where Emily was at. She was actually a very successful writer for the Times and, a pretty widely published journalist. So she kind of had a lot to lose by going out on a limb like this. But yeah, so that was.
Could you look comparatively at the books and things that she wrote, though, that this was much more in the vein of Mark Twain, or did it look like this was a marriage of her writing style and Mark Twain?
So everything else she wrote for like women's magazine. She was like a mainstream writer, she wrote like Harper's Bazaar and things like that. So she had a weekly like advice column that was syndicated for a while. And then she would sign her name with things like I can't remember her. She had like a fake name that she would sign there, and she was kind of known as this like advice kind of gossip columnist. So that is a very different style of writing for sure. The introduction has a very different style of writing than the book itself. Now, I will be the first to admit I am not a Twain scholar. I've done I've swallowed my share of Twain, like many of us have in school. So I'm familiar enough with his life to know that there are elements of him that come through very strongly in this story. Namely, the story is about a kid named Jasper. So that's the title is Jap Herron. So it's Jasper. And he basically goes to this town and he apprentices at a newspaper and he starts becoming the print master. And it's kind of a prodigal son story. Twain scholars, I'm sure, would probably say absolutely not. There's no way this is Mark Twain. Emily fans might say, well, it had to come all that way from the spirit world, so it gets a little muddled. It's not a particularly it's a little painful, honestly, to read the book, the novel itself, and it got some pretty scathing reviews. One of them was like, if this is the best that Twain can do from the other side, we suggest he stays where he is, and things like that. Yeah, pretty. And then someone else said, well, if she had just written it, it would be a great story. But the fact that she tried to say Twain wrote it, they took exception to that. But the story of the story is really the beauty of this, because it goes on into actually there's a lawsuit, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And there's another great line in the paper where they say, the existence of life after death will be proved today, not by psychics, not by spiritualist mediums, but by lawyers in a court of law. And there was talk that she was going to have to bring the Ouija board in and show her methods. But ultimately, basically, her publisher was sued by Twain's daughter and the Harper and Brothers publisher, because Mark Twain is a pen name. And basically, Harper and Brothers were like, well, we own that name. That we made that name. We made Twain. We don't own Samuel Clemens, but we own Twain. So you can use it. Even though she was not the only one to make that claim, I think there's another backstory and a theory that I have as to why they took such exception to her version of this. That is that there was a man who was kind of the head of the Cyclical Research Society, and he started attending Emily's sessions, and he started taking notes, and then he started writing to Clara Clemens, asking her to verify things that were coming through on these boards. Now, can you imagine, your father's passed away several years ago. You're just trying to get on with your life, right? You're the daughter of the only living child of the greatest, American author of the times, right? And some Yahoo keeps emailing or keeps sending you letters saying, oh, could you verify what your grandfather looked like on his deathbed? And would your father have said this? And so after like the third or fourth letter, she said, you know what? Talk to my lawyers. I can't handle you anymore. Well, this guy, so Emily's book gets published, and then this same guy publishes a big piece in his magazine called the Mirror, talking about it. And at this point, Clara's super annoyed, and so are the Harper brothers. And so, in my opinion, this probably would have gone under the radar had it not been for that man harassing the daughter, because it really didn't ultimately hit copyright infringement, in that it really would not have harmed the sales of Twain. It was, if anything, might have pushed them up, but I think there was this interfering element that was not taken into account. So yeah, some dude ruined it for her, basically.
For the full account of this story, get Shadowzine issue 3. More information at shadowzine, zine.com, Shadowzine. Plus, you can see all the other great issues that are out and available. Each one can be kept separately, or you can collect them all, which I recommend because each one has great in-depth insights to different aspects of the paranormal world. The very talented and wonderful American author Varla Ventura is our guest this evening as we are talking about Ouija. And obviously, I've had Varla on in the past, and we've spoken about pukas and fairies and mermaids. And I love the work and research you do in bringing these things, these parts of culture back into our lexicon. A lot of stories that might have been lost to time, which in essence is exactly what Emily Grant Hutchins was doing, right? She was reintroducing Mark Twain in a way that was capturing the attention and imagination of the world. And even though things didn't necessarily go well for her by doing this, it's certainly something that spurred a lot of interest. And maybe people that would go back and buy Twain books to read them, to compare them to Jap Herron, right? And see if there was similarities in the writing styles. So there's kind of that old, you can't make an omelet without breaking an egg thought involved in this.
Too bad you weren't her lawyer. Because that would have been a great argument. Hey, this is actually good for Twain's book sales. Just let
Your
us do
Honor,
this.
I say, Your Honor, I would like to present the fact.
Yeah, really.
And really,
Um,
Mark Twain, knowing his personality, knowing his interest in the world and the way that people interact, I think he would have been fascinated by this and interested in that element. I mean, I don't know if professionally it would have bothered him that somebody was kind of bastardizing his name and putting something out there, but the concept behind it, do you think that that would have been something that would have appealed? I mean, that seems to fit into his writing, right? His books, he had supernatural elements in them.
yeah, well, they knew each other. That's the other plot
Oh.
twist. They knew each other. There's correspondence between, so Twain came to, so first of all, she was from Hannibal. She was from
Oh.
Hannibal, Missouri. So hometown girl. So of course she was quite familiar with Twain. And then they had met several times and exchanged correspondence. And I have actually read the letters. So one time Twain came to town and delivered a speech. And keep in mind, like this was, it was much later in his career. He had already, published widely, and he was kind of just touring around and giving talks and stuff. And her husband, without being asked, transcribed. So he was a transcriber. He transcribed Twain's speech for him. Of course, this is before things were recorded. He transcribed Twain's speech for him and then mailed it to him and said, my wife and I really enjoyed speaking with you. And here's this. And then Twain wrote back very, very politely. And then Emily wrote to him and asked him a few questions about writing and just like talking about their hometown and things like that. One article I read years ago, which actually made me mad, presented the idea that Emily that he had been dismissive of her, and so therefore she did this in like a jilted woman act of a jilted woman. And I dismissed that theory because, again, like she had more to lose than she had to gain in many ways. And also, I just think that's like a terrible excuse, to just say, oh, it's just like this crazy woman and she just was out for revenge she was just trying to get famous. Well, she was trying to get famous. I mean, she had already established herself as a writer, so she wanted that writing career. There's no doubt about that. And we don't know. We really don't know. Was this some sort of fantastic publicity stunt? Because if it was, it almost worked. Had kind of backfired in the end. And the fun thing, and I think it's Bob who has Bob might have a copy of the book, but I think John at the Salem Talking Board Museum has a copy as well of Jap Herron. But one of the things with the lawsuit is the books were supposed to all be destroyed. Well, sure they were. That's what Kennerly, her publisher, said. Of course I'll destroy those. And of course he didn't destroy them all. And a few, but very few exist. And he probably did a small print run to begin with. So there's a few copies out there. And then there's a facsimile that has been scanned and is available on Gutenberg. If anybody wants to read the full story of Jap Herron, read the novel itself. It's probably about a 60,000 word slog. But you can also read the summary in the zine if you'd like. So there's so many different elements to the story, and it's just kind of wild. And she really did lose a lot from it. But yeah, the fact that they were supposedly destroyed. And then I read some funny article about her publisher who was said to be a rabble rouser. And he published a lot of esoteric and occult things in, that's how a lot of the esoteric publishers kind of got started, is in New York. They just published all these like pamphlets and then eventually turned those into books and they became publishing companies from there. So there's just like so many aspects to it.
Did this cause a wave? Did people start trying to write books via channeling at that time then because of this? Or did it take a bad hit and people stayed away?
So actually, Patience Worth was really responsible for a big resurgence and interest in channeled materials and in the psychic arts during that time. So Pearl Coran's work was more influential. Now, keep in mind, though, she was not claiming that she was writing from, like, the people who've had a little more success with that are the ones that have claimed that they have contacted an entity, but not a named entity like a ghost, like the ghost of Twain. But Emily was not the only one to have claimed that she was writing through the ghost of Twain. And I think that there was definitely there was a big resurgence and interest in that. And this played into it. I don't think it turned people off. But I do think it made Emily's family very uncomfortable. And, you know, she was kind of became the black sheep of the family after that.
Why did this story impact you so much that this is something you wanted to share and get out to the world?
I had read a little bits of this story years ago. Actually, I was reading it on Gutenberg and thinking, is this really happening? What I think is happening here? Because it's convoluted language and it was, you know, written in 1917. So I just really wanted to explore it from beginning to end, but give a little bit of a different perspective, not really land in any one camp, but just give a little bit more perspective on what it was like to be a woman writing in those times. And also being familiar with, you know, the Ouija board and the way psychic arts work, I felt like I was a little bit more in that, could give a more well-rounded view of the story.
Well, it's fantastic. And you can get it, shadowzine.com, issue number 3, Mark Twain's Ouija Mystery by Varla Ventura. It is out and available. Plus, you can find all the other great issues that are available for you to read and educate yourself on. So we're left with the question, folks. Was Jap Herron truly Twain's unfinished business? Or was it a clever con cloaked in a mysticism and seance? One thing's certain, they say energy never dies. But what about the imagination? Can it continue to wonder and create even past the point of life's physical boundaries? Dreams cannot be contained, and in this instance, neither can the stories of a legend. A huge thanks to Varla Ventura for guiding us through this literary haunting. Be sure to check out her books if you love the odd, the eerie, and the deliciously unexplained. Until next time, my darklings, keep your pens ready and your planchettes steady. I'm Dave Schrader, and this has been the Paranormal 360.